categories I'm going to talk about. Oh, sorry. Let me just get rid of that pop-up. So the other items that are listed here are specific to Class B licensing for businesses. So it seems a little bit out of the blue that I'd mentioned that body rub parlors do not qualify, but we have to put it in there because they've applied, and that's in the same category, Class B, as we're talking about today. Also, businesses where the primary focus caters to children, so things like children's clothing stores, toy stores, daycares, places or businesses that cater to children in general, would not be eligible for Class B licensing. And finally, any business where the primary focus is the sale of food or beverage, for example, a grocery store, would not be eligible for licensing. So again, there are some notable exceptions for that last bullet point in that we are able to issue Class B licenses to artisan and farmers markets, even though a farmer's market in general can look a lot like a business that is primarily focused on the sale of food and beverage. It is still possible for some types. And like I said, that particular Class B license tends to come with a lot of conditions. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would love to have an offline conversation with you because the application is going to be a little bit different than it is for a standing farm. Okay, I apologize, there is quite a bit of text on this screen right now. This is pulled directly from our application package for Class B licensing. When you get to our website, if you're going to download an application form, we actually give 2 checklists at the beginning of that application form. This is checklist 1, and it basically tells you all the things you need to enter in a preliminary application. We require an application fee of $200. We require the actual application form to be completed, to be filled out. You need to get yourself a CRC, a criminal record check, something that's at least 90 days fresh from the local RCMP or police. And that'll be for any director shareholders of the applicant company. You'll need something called a particulars of individual form. This is a form that we will issue to you to fill out so that we know who all your directors and shareholders are. We will need a floor plan. I touched on this a little bit earlier. The floor plan should include some very specific details. Ideally, I like to see a floor plan and a site plan, but bare minimum, we need a floor plan, and that should indicate all the access points, all entrances and exits. If you plan on having kitchen facilities, where the kitchen facilities are positioned, if you where your bathrooms are positioned, and generally speaking, we need an idea of what the premises is physically going to look like. It doesn't need to be professional blueprints. You can literally just pull out a pencil and do a line drawing for us. And as long as the elements on that floor plan are clear, that will suffice. We'll also need a food menu and a liquor menu. These can both be drafts. You don't need to have finalized food and liquor menus to apply. You can just have a general idea of what you'd like to be charging for these items and draft it out to us. And we can use that to start off your application. If the food requirements change, like I said, the Class B has very low food requirements. It's at minimum just preserved food items that you typically find in a vending machine. So if you decide you want to expand those food items later, that's fine. That's absolutely permissible. What we're concerned about is if you have zero food service, that might affect your eligibility. Okay, so once we get all those preliminary items, what will happen is licensing will receive the application, the first part of the application, and they will go through it, make sure it has all of its elements, and then they'll send it over to my team to inspections for review. At that point, the inspector will likely get in touch with the applicant and just go through their application one more time just to make sure everything is accurate and that they have all the necessary parts so that they can post the application to AGLC's webpage for objections. This period of time used to be, I want to say probably pre-COVID for sure, maybe going on 2 years now. This application objection period used to be 21 days, which meant that you're guaranteed a 21-day period of no activity for while you waited for objections. We have since reduced that period to 7 days. So if there's anyone in the community that has an issue with the issuance of a Class B license, they have 7 days to make themselves heard. We only take objections in writing. So if they're not willing to send us a document, we don't count it as an objection. And we do not, the AGLC does not entertain objections that involve competitive issues, issues of zoning or issues of municipal purview. zoning or space or distance between licenses, we don't look at those. We don't entertain those objections either, and we don't entertain any moral objections. So if you have somebody who doesn't think there ought to be a liquor license in your area, we would not be holding up your application for that purpose. And then once the application objection period is over and we've received 0 objections, which is normally happens, I would say, in about 95% of our applications. If no objections are received, we proceed to part 2 of the application. If an objection is received, as I mentioned earlier, some of those objections, although we do have to deal with them, they will not hold up your license, things like competitive issues, spacing issues, zoning and bylaw issues. So don't be concerned if we do get an objection during that period, but I can say at this time, it's very rare. We don't see a lot of objections, and most of the objections that we do see to a license are based on issues that we will not entertain, like the competitive issue. All right, so this is the end part of the application process. I mentioned earlier there's a $200 application fee. This isn't a typo. There is also a $200 licensing fee. So all in to get you licensed, it's a total of $400 in fees. We will need some additional paperwork, including particulars of incorporation and certificate of incorporation. That document needs to be notarized. We need to have you acknowledge some other forms. And on top of that, we need an executed lease or certificate of title and city business licensing, fire approval, and approval of the responsible health authority. So that means that, again, you'd need some kind of food establishment permit for your facility from Alberta Health Services. Once all of those items are received, the inspector will contact you for a final inspection. Final inspections are done physically on site. Even through COVID, we still we mask up and we practice physical distancing, and we still do on site in-person inspections. So the inspector will come to the property. They'll review all the areas that you're planning on doing liquor service. They'll review any areas that you plan on doing storing your liquor in, and we'll make sure that your application floor plan matches with what you actually physically have, and that you have all your approvals in place. We'll also go through a process called operating procedures. Operating procedures is basically a tutorial on the contents of the licensee handbook. So we tell you all the most important points of basically maintaining and managing the legislation and policies that are involved with liquor licensing, things like asking for identification, knowing how to cut patrons off, security measures, and other premises management. The inspector will be reviewing all of that with you before handing license over. And normally, once all that is done, your license is issued either on the spot the same day or shortly after. From that point on, you are licensed. Your license is good for a 1-year period, and each year on your anniversary date, you will be required to renew. Typically, our licensing department will give you anywhere from 60 to 90 days warning to point out when your anniversary date is up, and they'll send you an application package to renew. And if you do not renew, then the assumption we make is that you no longer want to continue with licensing. And then the license is eventually canceled. If you get into a situation where you've been issued a license and the license lapses, my recommendation is always to try to get it reinstated as quickly as you can after that lapse, because the longer you wait, the more paperwork you'll have to do, and eventually you'll get to the point where you just have to reapply as if you're a brand new premises. So pay attention to what your anniversary date is and make sure that you're paying your license fees each year if you want to maintain that Class B license. So that's the application process in a nutshell. At this time, I'll be happy to take any questions that have come in.
Sorry about that. We do have a couple of questions, and I will start with sharing that we will be sharing this presentation, and we have a little one-pager that'll come out. So there's some more information. I know some of you were madly writing. So first question, you mentioned we need a certificate of incorporation for the business. Can businesses who are not incorporated, such as a partnership, still be licensed?
Yep. Partnership can be licensed and individual themselves can be licensed. We would still count that. Now, I believe you still have to fill out the form in some capacity, but you don't need to have a specific type of incorporation necessarily to be licensed. We do license individuals and we do license partnerships.
All right, and then the similar question, someone has a sole proprietorship, so that would fall into that as well, I'm guessing?
Yep.
Wonderful. All right, I'm sure there's got to be some more questions out there, guys. I think what it is wonderful is, for those that are interested in doing multiple events, obviously the cost for doing a one-time public-facing event becomes actually higher than the cost of holding a Class B liquor license.
Yeah.
So I know we were in a scenario last year where there's a couple of farms that were looking to host multiple events throughout the year. And we're looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, if we want to do 6 events, that's $3,000. Whereas this total cost is $400 to get you up and running and $200 every year. So it does make a lot of sense. There's a question about ProServe. Do we need to have our ProServe?
Yeah, your staff will need to have ProServe. We have a whole suite of training on our smart training programs that we present to the public. ProServe is the only one that is mandatory. So unless we add an additional condition to a license at a later time, ProServe is the only one that's mandatory. So you will want to make sure your staff get ProServe.
Yeah, and the ProServe is accessible online, so you can just do that class online. And then online, AGLC also has the security, a number of different free courses that people can take that just will help you run your business when you're doing liquor service. Yeah. We've got another question here. Our event site is an old farm site. Hold on, just flip to the next one. So our facilities temporary or mobile allowed?
It depends. So what would normally be considered temporary, sometimes we can deem it as like a standing facility. So for example, if your site is made up of, let's say, for example, your main building or your administrative building is trailers, technically those are mobile, but we would look at those as like a permanent facility, provided that, of course, you didn't move them around too much. I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have licensed other structures on the farm, things like patios, separate patios that aren't attached to the building, gazebos, Quonset huts, stuff that, basically any area that you are looking to do food and liquor service in, that you're expecting to have patrons in, we can probably license. But we'd have to be careful that your main license would be some sort of structure that has some kind of permanence to it.
Wonderful, and that answered the next question as well. And if somebody wanted to say license a garden or a space, like let's say, they had beehives and they wanted to have something near that. What if there's not a physical structure? Could you license a garden as long as there's some sort of area to it?
Yep. So what we would accept for definition could be anything from like just clear landscaping, putting up rocks, bushes, potted plants. We've accepted things like stanchions, basically temporary structures, fencing. It does not have to be full height, bolted to the ground, permanent walls. Like I said, you can do it via landscaping. The absolute minimum we've done for a patio has been chalk outlined on the pavement, which happened to work for that particular structure, but I can understand that it may not work for everybody. What you want to make sure that you're reviewing when you're developing a plan for where you're doing your liquor service is, okay, if I'm the average customer who's maybe had a glass or two of wine, am I going to know where I am and where I can drink and where I can't drink? And if the answer is they could end up wandering around the whole property by accident because there's no signage, there's no barriers, there's no definition, I would suggest that you need to find a way to do some definition. Like I said, doesn't have to be permanent bolted to the ground. We have accepted a lot of temporary structures and movable portable structures. What you'll want to do is you want to make sure that once you decide on a area to be licensed, that's the area. And if you're going to change it or reconfigure it, that is make it bigger, make it smaller, move it to the opposite end of your property, please contact us so we can process a reno and make sure that your floor plans and your site plan is always up to date. Because if an inspector comes out, this is the other thing I forgot to mention a little bit earlier, the inspector will come out physically to do your final inspection, and you can expect to see an inspector at least once a year, whether it be for an operating check or an actual full-blown maintenance inspection. And one of the things they will check during the maintenance inspection is if there's been any renovations or changes to your facility or buildings. So it's a lot easier if you notify us of changes rather than having the inspector come out and be surprised by them.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, a couple more questions and one comment. So we have one from Rick Barr. Thank you, Rick, for this. But he says that ProServe is not a big deal, time consuming, but very straightforward. We've never had a staff member have to retake it for a poor mark. So yeah, don't let something like that deter you. It is very straightforward. It's online. I can't remember the cost. Is it 25 or 35, something like that?
I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's about $25. And bear in mind that if you have difficulties, there's some options. So we have ProServe, the preliminary part of the course, which is the actual instruction part. You're able to, I think we provide those still in a variety of different languages. There's the option between reading versus an audio file. So if you have a staff member who maybe has difficulty with reading written instructions, you can switch to the audio file to actually listen to all the instructions and all the directions in that course. And at the end of the day, if you still have problems, the SMART training team is really good. They can absolutely help you out. They can walk you through things. I want to say you get 5 tries, but I'm not 100% sure if we change that. But even in the event that you exhaust all your attempts, there's still stuff we can do. So don't worry about that.
All right, wonderful. I have a specific question about, can you license under a tented area?
As long as you can get the other approvals that I talked about, so fire, health, municipal, and as long as that tented area, again, it's for the purpose of liquor sale and service, that tented area is an area that's not going to be moved, collapsed, or reconfigured during the time you're doing actual liquor service. Yeah, we can license a tent.
All right, I've got another question. What if we wanted to change where we held events based on season? So outdoor space in the summer, indoor space in the winter. Can you designate multiple locations for one license?
We can. And what I do in that scenario is whatever you want to do, whether it's seasonally or not, everything would be listed on your license. We can put a notation on your license saying that, this gazebo is only authorized to the, let's see, the city of Edmonton does it. I think I want to say May to September or May to October. For those temporary patio structures. Now, I can tell you, because of COVID, the date limitations went right out the window. We basically said, if you want to have a patio in the dead of winter, go for it, you can do it. But if there's any structures that are seasonal, we can absolutely put notations on your license to make sure that those are licensed when you need them to be licensed.
Wonderful. So next question, we have a glamping destination on our farm. We use our main building and area, but we want to be able to license the glamping site so folks can take beverages like a bottle of wine back with them, or offer some sort of service.
Okay.
As a check-in. Is that an option?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of like actual campsites. So in our legislation, in the Gaming, Liquor, and Cannabis Act, if you are consuming liquor in a residence or a temporary residence, you actually don't need licensing. So it would really depend on whether, if the glamping was done by the farm itself, whereas they issued all the tents and equipment and everything, and they set everything up and they built that structure, and then the customer just shows up and parties.
Yeah.
That we could probably still find a way to license that. If your farm is more like you're running it like an actual like bona fide commercial campsite, where you're just inviting people in and selling them, there's your camp spot, then the licensing wouldn't be required for the camping spots. It'd be required for the main building still, and for other areas where the actual farm was providing liquor service. But if we're talking about a bona fide like campground, you can actually do liquor service in a campground with less licensing than you could for any other type of structure. Does that cover the question?
Yeah, I think so. If not, please feel free to type us some more. I'll move on to the next one. If we bring another company in, to serve alcohol, like a craft brewery bringing in kegs? Does it affect or change the license?
So it depends. Once you have Class B licensing, you are permitted to source your liquor. You can buy your liquor from any Class D. Class D is a typical liquor store license. Manufacturers also have Class Ds, so that's not a problem. You can buy from them. However, if the intent is to have that manufacturer come in and basically control and take over liquor service for you, that would mean that a Class B license wouldn't be appropriate in that instance. That would mean that it really should be we should be issuing the license to the Class B. Now we have something, pardon me, to the manufacturer. We have something that is available to a lot of manufacturers called a caterer's extension. And they could come in with a caterer's extension and do an event. But if the intent is we're going to get a Class B, but then we're going to parse out or contract out all the liquor service and all the liquor control issues to this other entity, whether that other entity is another licensee or a third party or contractor or concessionaire, then it probably wouldn't be appropriate to maintain your Class B license. Now, I can advise that, if you get the Class B license and you're doing regular events, but once in a while you want to have either a private party come in for a private event, or you want to have the manufacturer come in for 1 or 2 events a year, what we can do is we can suspend your Class B license and allow that manufacturer to show up with a caterer's extension potentially, or allow any private party like wedding party, birthday party, anniversary to show up with a private SEL on your property, but we would need to suspend the standing Class B license to pull that off.
So basically what you're saying is you can only have one license operating at a time. So
Absolutely.
Let's say you've invited a craft brewery out, then their license would be running, not your own, is
right.
the question. Yeah.
Right.
And
now, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Nope. I
was going to say there are some provisions in our policy for what we call tasting events. And so you could invite a manufacturer or any liquor agent technically to conduct a tasting event on your property. They couldn't conduct sales, but they could come in and have customers sample their products. Smaller sizes, of course, but you'd have the catch is you can't sell the tastings. The tastings have to be free. So there's a number of options if you want to invite a local craft brewer or craft distiller onto your property to help out with an event. There are some options there. It's not completely verboten, but you do have to follow certain policies to pull that off.
In that scenario you just spoke about for the tasting event, so the samples are free. Are they permitted to do off sales, sealed products to go?
No, if you want to do off sales, you got to upgrade to a Class A.
Okay.
I had mentioned a little bit earlier that if really your intent is you want to have like a little cafe or restaurant type operation running most of the time, and then you want to do bigger events throughout the summer or throughout different parts of the year, I would suggest that the license you probably want then is a Class A license. It has maximum flexibility and you get the benefit of conducting off sales. And you also get the benefit of, if you're basically the Class B tourist facility style license is only meant to provide the sale and service of liquor during events. So if you don't have an event or a tour or some sort of scenario where the customer's coming in, buying a ticket, paying a fee, and accessing your property or facility, if none of that stuff is going on, technically the Class B license isn't in effect. So again, if what you're looking is more for like allowing drop-in services where the customer just pulls up to the farm and, pops into the cafe for a coffee and a meal, that would be Class A licensing. We could easily pull off Class A licensing for that.
Okay, great. Next question, can a food truck get a Class B license?
The only way it could is if it was parked permanently. And I say that because we do have some updates to policy that are happening. They're still in the works. They're not finalized yet. We do have some situations where food trucks are going to find that they are going to have some expanded ability to do some stuff, including liquor licensing. However, as it stands right now, if I had an applicant and the applicant was a food truck operator, what I'd have to tell them is if they want any kind of licensing, they have to have a fixed address. So they have to park it. And as soon as they move, that license is no longer in effect.
Great. Now, once you get a Class B license, are you able to order direct from AGLC so you can take advantage of wholesale pricing?
Yeah, you can order directly from Connect. And like I said earlier, you can order directly from Connect, or you can order from any local craft manufacturer. It still technically runs through Connect. Or you can go into any Class D retail liquor store or anything with a Class D equivalent, including a manufacturer's off sales, a hotel off sales, basically anybody else, and purchase liquor in that manner as well.
All right. So there's a question of sort of trying to access some slightly better pricing as well. So let's say you've got your license, you're prepared to sell it, but you obviously don't want to be buying retail. What would you recommend for next steps if you don't make minimums for AGLC?
That would be, you'd still have to go through Connect. Because I'm assuming the question is about, well, I don't have the space for a pallet worth of product.
They're interested in how do you get access to some more wholesale pricing. So obviously ordering direct from Connect, but if you aren't ordering pallets, how do you get a better price? How do you negotiate perhaps even with a liquor store or create a relationship to buy from them?
Yeah, I can't really answer that other than to say that liquor stores you are permitted to negotiate with liquor stores specifically. However, once you have a Class B license, we have a completely different set of legislation called inducement legislation. And what that would mean is that as a Class B licensee, you wouldn't be able to cut a side deal with an agent such as a manufacturer for cheaper than wholesale pricing or cheaper pricing than any other licensee would access. I can talk a little bit about that. What that means is that, you're absolutely free to, we already said, order from Connect, order from a liquor store. You can order directly from manufacturers, but that manufacturer isn't permitted to offer you a lower price than the next licensee that's calling them. So our expectation is that licensees would always buy from the same price bracket, from the same wholesale price bracket. And we have had instances where manufacturers have attempted to give specialized pricing to specific licensees, to certain licensees, and that's always been considered an inducement. So the other thing that's considered an inducement is if that same manufacturer were to give you any advantage or benefit, again, over other licensees. So, hey, if you buy from me, I'll give you 3 kegs for the price of 1. I'll give you a kegerator. I'll give you free refrigeration equipment. I'll renovate your dining room. I'll renovate your bathrooms. I'll give you all kinds of freebies if you exclusively sell my product. That's called an inducement. And there's actually fairly significant fines involved when that happens. So if you're looking for price advantages, the only price advantage you'd be able to enter into is potentially with between you and a liquor store, because we don't count liquor store as they're not liquor agents, they're not manufacturers, they're not suppliers. So you actually could technically negotiate a lower price with a liquor store. I don't know of any liquor store who would say, yeah, we'll sell you below wholesale pricing. That would be an extraordinary situation. I haven't really seen it. But in general, liquor stores are really the only ones who are able to say, okay, I can do different pricing for different people because there's no prohibited relationship in that scenario. Whereas a liquor agent, and again, all manufacturers under our policy are liquor agents. A liquor agent can't enter into a special deal or contract with a specific licensee to gain advantages over other licensees.
Yeah, and I think the goal with this question was to be able to access, wholesale pricing as opposed to retail.
Yeah, order from Connect or call up your local craft brewer and say, look, I want to put in an order through Connect. Tell me what to do. They'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and those ways, and also through liquor stores too, if you don't have huge orders, you can set up accounts with them and access like a cost plus. So it'll be a wholesale plus of 5% or 8% or whatever you negotiate. So it'll be always above wholesale, but always below retail as well. So there's lots of different things that you can do. Next question, can we sell off sales as well as alcohol for consuming under Class B?
That would you'd have to upgrade. Yeah, you'd have to move to a Class A for that. And just so that you guys know, even in the situation I talked about a little bit earlier, where if you have a manufacturer show up with a caterer's extension, they still can't sell off sales. They can only do drink like on-site consumption in that case. So yeah, there's very limited situations where you can do off sales. However, just at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, we did change our policy specific to Class A's so that they had the flexibility to do off sales. So really, if that's what you're interested in doing, you need a Class A.
I've got a couple of questions about just sort of the minimum orders, understanding how big a pallet is, how many cases, just to get their head wrapped around that.
I would say if you can put those to me in email, what I'd like to do is I'd like to shoot those over to our liquor services department, because I'm probably going to give you the wrong information. But yeah, if you can, if I can deal with those offline, that would be better, because I can put you in touch with the correct departments.
Sure. And I think, at least back in the day, I think it used to be a minimum of 25 cases.
It depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you go to your local manufacturer and put in, it could be less than that. They can do one-offs. They're still able to charge you like the wholesale without going through Connect technically. I think a lot of people are under the impression that the way that distribution works in the province is that a manufacturer has to send all their stuff to our warehouse, and then the warehouse sends it out to every single customer in the province. That's not really true. Sometimes that movement is only on paper. And if you have a local craft brewer, you could technically do an order through Connect, and then that craft brewer can hand bomb or run that keg out to you once they've collected the fees, of course, once they've recorded the sale and collected the fees, and they could literally just run it out to their local neighborhood licensee. The movement isn't necessary. We don't require a local manufacturer to send us all their product and then send it out to any local customers. It is possible to move physically a lot easier.
All right. Next question is about pricing. So once you have your liquor license, how do you access the pricing, and how do you know what things cost?
That would be a question for Connect again. They have their catalog listed, or contact your local manufacturer and you can get their price listing as well. Again, if you're looking for a full-blown catalog for ordering, I'd have to send you over to the Connect people. Yeah. But it is widely available. Once you have an account, once you're signed up with us, you'll be able to access that information.
Yeah, so it's an online catalog that has all the wholesale pricing, so you'll understand what the costs are, and then you'll understand the markups as well.
Yeah, as far as I know, they still run it online. Yep.
Yeah. Do you know what AHS is looking for their approvals? I own a greenhouse and would like to do a sip and shop experience.
Okay, so AHS, I think it's specifically what you're looking for is a food establishment permit. Typically, for the type of food service that we require as a minimum for a Class B, it's whatever the lowest category of food establishment permit is. Like this, I don't remember exactly what the category number is. You'll have to contact AHS for that, but you will need some kind of permitting for that.
Right. And I think we're down to our last two questions. Does a Class A have a price regulation that they have to follow to sell?
There is something called minimum pricing. It's actually not just Class A, it's for other classes as well. Minimum drink prices, basically, they're quite reasonable, and those are available in the licensee handbook. Generally speaking, for the base price for, I'm probably going to get these numbers wrong right off the top of my head, but typically for draft beer, it's 35 cents an ounce. For cocktails or single shot beverages, you're talking maybe $2.75 per. It's the minimum drink pricing is quite low, so it's not like you're going to be in a situation where you want to charge lower than that, but there is minimum drink pricing you do have to follow. You can't give away liquor for free, and also if for your service, you want to make sure that you are actually providing some kind of liquor menu, so you're telling each customer what exactly it is they're buying and for what they can expect for how much money. There is no such thing as all you can drink or for a fixed price. Drink buffet, multiples for the price of one. Those would all be contrary to the minimum drink pricing.
Wonderful. And then the last information is about Connect logistics, and that information basically becomes available once you have a license of type, right?
Yeah, I can't really speak 100% on behalf of Connect, but I know that once you once you get signed up and you're ready to go, you will have access to Connect ordering.
Marvelous. All right. Well, that takes us to the one more under the wire.
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
looking At being, I am looking at, I think having beer on a farm, what kind of license would be appropriate? Oh, brewing. Thank you.
Brewing. Okay. So if you're actually starting to make your own product and you want to do it on a commercial level where you're selling it to the public, that would be Class E licensing. And as it turns out, that is my exact portfolio. I handle all the manufacturers in the north part of the province. So that's my specialty. So please, my contact information, Tannis is going to be able to fan that out. Give me a call. I can start you off for an actual Class E small manufacturer's license.
Wonderful. All right. Well, so we'll wrap up here. Tony, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us here today. For everybody on the call, you'll get a copy of the presentation. You'll also get a little one-pager that has all the contact information for Tony, for Tannis, for myself, and also for Nicola, who runs all of our social media. So if you've got any questions for us, feel free to send them off to us. Again, we've got Tony back January 11th and March 22nd. So feel free to sign up for those. And our next session is December 7th with Alberta Health Services, and it's called Can I Cook? So thank you again, Tony, and thank you guys for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me, everyone. Have a good day.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
I know.